our first seed versus 8th seed. It is going to be Boros Initiative, a deck that I know that you really like, and I think that's what you would have been bringing this weekend against the 4-color Snowko deck.
Love this Boros Initiative deck. So for those of you who have not seen this deck on camera, it is featuring a brand new card in the form of Forth Eorlingas. And we can get that up on the screen for you real quick. It's X red white. You make X 2/2s that both have haste and trample. And then the additional text, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, one or more opponents this turn, you become the monarch. So it's a real way to, the Boros Initiative deck has a lot of fast mana in the form of Ancient Tomb and City of Traitors and Simian Spirit God, Chrome Mox, etc., and a lot of ways to, you can cast that for 3 or 4 as early as turn 2 or 3.
How important is, like, I feel like Boros Initiative wants to be on the play, right? Like that's kind of one of the advantages. They can kind of explode out really quickly with things like you said there with the, petals, spirit guys, etc. Potentially almost get like blood moon effects on the battlefield early if they want to go that way, or some sort of hate piece. As we see, a 2 comes down here that gives us a little bit more mana advantage. It does come way around with 2 life, but as I'm talking about it, we're all over it. A turn 1 Fable This is obviously a lot better when you're on the play, but still pretty good when it's just your turn 1 play. It's going to eat a Force of Me, ditching a Brainstorm there. Is that sort of thing we have to do over on Ryan's side? We have to slow down this early turn, couple turns?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lock piece, so Sam does have a lot of ways to kind of prevent Ryan from being able to play spells. So the lock pieces here are Archon of Emeria, and then we also have Anointed Peacekeeper, which can, ATB, look at their hand, you name a card, and that spell or the spell or activated abilities of that card would cost 2 more. As we see an Archon hit the battlefield, that's kind of one of those sort of not lock pieces in the sense of you can't cast spells, period, but you only get to cast 1 spell a turn, so make it count.
Yeah, also does some sort of effect with lands, right? Non-basic lands come into the battlefield. Your opponent controls tapped, so it has that sort of semi-taxing effect at time. One thing we do need to speak about that hasn't happened so far this tournament is now it is open deck list. It's been closed deck list all the way up to this point, but now in the top 8, it is open. Everyone can see what the exact 75 or 95, depending if the Orion decks are floating around in here, of what your opponent could be playing. How much of an advantage or disadvantage is that, knowing exactly what your opponent is on? Obviously, some decks benefit from it, others don't. It affects mulligan decisions, etc.
Yeah, definitely matters a lot when you're determining whether or not you want to keep your opening hand. Like, for example, in this matchup, Ryan knows now that he knows he's playing against the Boros Initiative deck that has a lot of powerful early plays, things like Chalice the Void. Really wants to kind of prioritize having a Force of Will, as we see an uncounterable Seasoned Dungeoneer. No, you're not Force of Will in that one, Will.
No, Dungeoneer. Okay. It's time for me to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Let's see if we can get that dungeon up on the screen for you all. Obviously, different modes that we can start moving our way through the dungeon. I love this sort of flavor text to this and how it kind of plays out, and that all the dungeons are dungeons that are really in. Apparently, we can't get a dungeon up on screen. These are dungeons in Dungeons and Dragons.
It's fine. I got you, Will. I've played enough with this card. So there's kind of like it's split up into rooms. So the first 2 options the first one is when you go to the first chapter, you search for a basic, right? And then the next chapter, I believe, is you either choose put 2 counters on target creature, or you can scry 2. And then there's also different modes depending on which room you choose there. So there's also options that allow you to make your opponent lose 5 life. There's one that makes a treasure token. There's one that makes a 4/1 creature token. I believe the token may or may not have menace. I think it does. And then at the very end of the dungeon, once you've completed the entire dungeon, you get to look at, I believe it's the top 10 cards of your library, put a creature from among those onto the battlefield, and you also get to put 2+1/+1 counters on it. And the really cool thing about kind of the dungeon is once you've completed that dungeon, you can effectively kind of go back into it because you're hitting another creature that goes back into the dungeon. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling loop as a way.
A lot of text on that card, and that's kind of one of the powerhouses of this deck, right? Being able to turn and burn through each of those rooms on the way down to try and complete it, and then once it's completed, you just kind of rinse and repeat, keep going through it each turn, and on top of that, you get the extra benefits that we see here. It looks like we're going for the scry effect, which is the Lost Well. Undersea, obviously, very popular area in Dungeons and Dragons. So anybody out there that plays, let me know which class and race that you normally play them in. I like to play a human paladin, not going to lie to you. But the Undersea, it's underneath Baldur's Gate, which is obviously the set that a lot of these Magic the Gathering cards came from. Tomb being tapped again, a lot of damage being happening from that.
Yeah, I mean, Sam is not really under any pressure as of right now. Most of the time, when Ryan has, gotten to the position where Ryan is attacking, the game's likely locked up anyway. So Sam can be a little bit more liberal with his life total. Doesn't really have to worry about taking too much damage from that tomb. As we see another uncounterable dungeoneer, that's going to go a little bit further into the dungeon. I believe that's the four. I believe we've chosen to get the 4/1 token. We'll have to see if we can.
That's testing the team there. Do we have any 4/1 black skeleton tokens with menace flying around? Big advantage when players bring their own ones, but here comes another new card, another powerhouse that we've seen multiple times. The One Ring, obviously from the Lord of the Rings set that's just been released. We've seen a lot of it floating around in Modern. We've seen a dabble of it floating around in Legacy as well. And in these sort of 4-color Snowko powers, a new 4-color control Uro stuff, he's been playing it to great effect. And then we see it now hit the battlefield and already start drawing cards.
Okay, chat's so basically we went to the treasure token first and then the 4/1 after that. Okay, so I was right on the 4/1, but just didn't quite get there yet. So the Dungeoneer also has a very powerful attack trigger. Whenever it attacks, you get to explore, which is look at the top card of your library. You can either keep it on, you can choose to keep it on top, or if it's a land, I believe you can put it into your hand, and then it gets a counter if the top card of the library was a spell, which it definitely was, and we're going to want to keep that Caves of Chaos adventure on top.
Caves of Chaos Adventure. Okay, let me see if I can find that one. Where is that in my list? I can't find it. You're gonna when it comes on the battlefield, you're gonna have to tell us about that one. That one does.
There it
I
is, Will.
can.
We get it up.
Thank
It's a
you.
5/3 trample for 4 ATB. You take the initiative, and whenever it attacks, you get to exile the top card of your library. If you've completed a dungeon, you can play the card this turn without paying its mana cost. Excuse me. Otherwise, you can play it. So a way to draw some extra cards here for Sam.
Oh, okay. This is a nice one. We get to play this peacekeeper, kind of see if the coast is clear and what we can do, and we can make sure that they almost like silly attacks on these spells. We can name it, and it adds an extra 2. There it is on the screen for you all with 3 vigilance. Not super relevant, but could end up being because it's not it's got quite a good body to it, doing 3 damage. But working out can this terminus be a hard cast or not? The answer is not yet. With only 1 white source.
Yeah, this is a weird spot for Sam because, sees the Terminus, sees that there's only one white source in play, but does have a lot of creatures in the battlefield. You could consider not naming Terminus here because you're going into the last room of the dungeon, so you're going to be able to look at a bunch of cards to find another creature next turn. But it looks like we are going to go ahead and name the Terminus. That could potentially allow Ryan to be able to resolve an Uro next turn, which I guess even if you named the Uro, it would make it cost 6. You'd still be able to escape the one that's in the graveyard anyways. So it probably makes sense to name the Terminus.
And here comes Fable the Mirror Here come down, bringing along with it the Goblin Shaman token in foil. Flexing much? I don't think so. And here's a big draw step. Remember, we've got the ring active if we need to as well. That can draw us 2 more cards this turn.
Actually, thinking about it more, I wonder if we were supposed to name the ring because that would make it so we'd have to pay 2 to activate the ring, which means even if we found a white source, we wouldn't be able to cast the Terminus. But I guess if you pay 2 for the ring, you can still cast the Uro. So
Well, you'd
kind
be
of
able
a
to
weird
terminus and
spot.
then activate the ring, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? So if you don't draw the white source for turn, you wouldn't be able to ring into a white source. You know what I mean?
I got you. And here it is. Look, just as we spoke about, we're going to come down, draw us a card, gain us a bit of life, give us an extra land drop for the turn. We're going to play Misty for it. That will give us the extra white source that we need. And now, again, we're only a land off the top for being able to actually hard cast this terminus. But now a lot of triggers about to go on the stack. This is the dungeon. First dungeon going to be complete. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this bit says the Throne of the Dead free. Reveal the top 10 cards of your library. Put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. It gains hexproof until your next turn, and then shuffle the rest. What we're going to go with.
Eyeing up a caves. Interesting. You could have actually considered going for the Archon of Emeria that turn because Well, no, I guess that's not true because then you just go end of turn fetch. And the terminus would still be one land away, though. Kind of an interesting spot. We're going to go for the caves to be able to just go back into the dungeon to make sure that even if that terminus is able to be cast next turn, we want to make sure that we have, basically a follow up. Have even if all of our creatures die, we can just go back into the dungeon continuously to keep, finding more threats. And then if we look at life totals with Ryan at 20, Sam doing some quick math here, we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, potentially 14 power attacking this turn. So not quite lethal.
Interesting. We're going to see what we're going on. I've got some more D&D lore when you want me to go about the Throne of the Dead 3 and why it's called that. It's on a D&D book series to do with the three like big sort of powerhouses that ended up dying and becoming demigods from it. Bowlbane and I can never pronounce the last one. It's like Mifkrul, I think they pronounce it. But that's the lore behind that one. I warned you about the D&D facts and me. I'm not allowed to be around D&D things, otherwise I go off on one. As we see now, a Mystic Sanctuary going to come down. What's it going to be targeting from the graveyard pit on top of our deck? We'll find out. We might be activating the ring in response to putting it on top.
Probably, yeah. So you get a little bit more information. Oh, wow. What a crazy line. So we're going to put the Terminus on top and then activate the ring on Sam's turn to be able to miracle it on Sam's turn. Wow, what a line here from Ryan.
I love it. And this is going to clear up this battlefield nicely because remember, no counter magic on the other side. This is just the initiative deck. All this goes to the bottom of our library. These tokens, they're gone. And now it looks real good here for Ryan. Uro in graveyard, active ring on the battlefield, a bunch of land.
Yeah, the initiative does, it does give you a lot of value, but I'm not sure that kind of value really competes with, Ring drawing 3 to 4 cards a turn plus Uro drawing additional cards and gaining life. So this is going to be quite the uphill battle here for Sam.
Let's see what we could get done here. Draw step for the turn. Have a little look. Okay, Terminus. We know about Terminus. It's going to go back on a hand. It's not got a tax effect attached to it anymore. Ring on, well, I was about to say 2, but now it is 3 temptation counters. We're going to get another 3 cards in our hand. We spoke about it all weekend that we get to draw the cards before the damage is dealt. And that is one of the key things about the One Ring and how good it has been in multiple formats now.
Yep, Ring is it's such a good card, and especially combined with Uro being able to give you the life back to be able to continuously activate that ring and not have to worry about am I in danger of drawing too many cards, etc., etc. We do see it looks like a response.
Solitude, right?
Yeah, it must be a Solitude.
We're going to pay 2 more. Here comes a foil Solitude of all things as well. That's going to be nice. So we're going to gain 6 more life for Ryan, which is not a bad thing, especially as we got this ring on the battlefield, as we talked about. We're going to play the land because the trigger still happens from Uro. We get to draw an extra card. We get to play an extra land source and gain a little bit more life. So 9 extra life gained from that Uro. But there is now a Solitude on the other side of the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. That's like kind of a clean answer to the Uro. Obviously, you can't get the Uro back from the graveyard given that it's exiled, but it's still going to be really hard to compete with all these cards that Ryan's drawing from the ring and all this stuff. You have the Fable. You still have the initiative, so you can still kind of get value from that as well. But it really all depends on. I think Sam only has 1 or 2 cards left in hand. We'll have to see what the leftovers are. Maybe if there's not an answer for the Fable, you could see something like another initiative creature. You could start copying that with Fable the Mirror Breaker, which gets kind of crazy.
Like I think we're living in fairyland. I can't see that. I think this ring is going to run over it. The card advantage from Ryan now is going to be so much, but it is live paper magic. Anything can happen. Triggers can be missed. All sorts of things. The ring's not free. It does deal damage to us, even though we've gained like a bucket load of life so far. There is an Uro still in the graveyard as well, and this is going to be the 5th card in it. And okay, swords. Ending, get creatures off the other side of the battlefield, follow up with a halfling, and go.
Like we talked about the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. There was a quick answer to that, whether or not we could answer that. We're going to go Scrying. That's a Solitude. Solitude does help a little bit, but not a ton. It doesn't really solve all the. You can't Solitude the ring, Will.
No, well, it might be a bit less powerful if you could do that.
Yeah, I'm not even
Available.
sure if Sam wants the Solitude at this point. Might need to top deck something better, like maybe an initiative creature to kind of get the ball rolling. But is gonna, I would assume, keep the Solitude if we're keeping a card on top. And the nice thing about the Solitude is it not only kills the Halfling, but prevents Ryan from taking the initiative, which is certainly a way that you could get find yourself in a rough position. Maybe if there's any hope for Sam, it's that you need to keep the initiative and you cannot let Ryan get it.
I'm just there's some lore I don't know, and I'm trying to work out what is the lore behind the Lost Well. I think it is a spell to do with finding your way in Magic. I'm just trying to confirm that, but it would make sense with scrying. Being able to try and find your way, kind of work out your next future turns. As we're going to see a Solitude again, another foil Solitude coming down, taking out that delighted halfling. That is going to gain us a little bit more life, which isn't a bad thing in the face of this ring. And this is what I mean. Like 1-for-1 cards, we'll take it all day long on Ryan's side, right?
Yeah, exactly. Every single time that Sam makes this kind of trade, and I believe there's also another Uro in the graveyard, which we are going to go towards here for Ryan. So that is going to be yet another problem here for Sam. Ideally, you would want to save the Solitude to be able to get the flashback Uro, but the problem with that is then you're letting Ryan take the initiative, and it's just even spiraling more out of control for Ryan at that point.
Yeah, I think we're just treading water at the minute. You know what I mean? On Sam's side, we're doing what our best that we can to survive here. I think it's just a matter of time until Ryan's just going to get that out of here. I've got an active hero. I've got an active ring on here. Yeah, you can go for the dungeon as many times as you want at this point. I've got so much going on this side, and you're only at 9 life.
Yeah, that's another good point too. It's not really going to take long for Ryan to close this game out because of that ancient tomb doing doing a lot of the work for him. We're going to go to chapter 3 here. That's going to get us a treasure. Or just, I say chapter, not chapter. The dungeon room. We're going to go to the next room next turn. That will get us the 4-1. But yeah, there's not. I mean, I guess another Solitude would be a start to take care of the Ura that gives you a blocker for the Halfling. I'm going to go with a
Well,
Peacekeeper.
this might be enough, right? If we see the grip and we see what's going on here, and it's like, okay, cool, I got you.
You want to take a look? You want to see what my hand is?
Oh, okay, we got Force of Will, Terminus, Prismatic Ending, the One Ring, a Swords of Plowshare, and a Ponder. Don't get me wrong, there's two ways of looking at this. One is, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose this game. The other one is, it's untimed. I'm on camera.
True.
I need to get that camera time in. And the one good thing about being on camera is when you get those bad beat stories, everybody sees it. You're not just you're not over exaggerating what's happening. It was a massacre. The One Ring came down and ran away with the game, and we're all seeing it here, unfortunately, for Sam. He's only game 1 though in the top 8, so still a lot to play for.
Yeah, and then as we talked about the post-board game, Sam's going to get to be in the play in the next game. That's very, very massive for his deck. There's a lot of spells that wants to be able to be played on turn 1, especially after sideboard. Able to bring in stuff like Magus. We'll get to the sideboard in a second, but not. Well, maybe we can get confirmation on what the Peacekeeper is naming. I'm guessing
It was Terminus.
It was Terminus. Okay.
Yeah, Terminus is upside down in
Got
the
it.
hand, and that's what we did last time. So I imagine it is Terminus.
Okay. Yeah, that one kind of makes sense. I mean, there's plenty of mana in play for Ryan, so it doesn't really matter what you name at that point. We're going to see a prismatic ending started here. Take care of the Peacekeeper. That's an attack for 7. Put Sam down to 5, and then should be lethal next turn.
This is crazy. Are we activating the ring here? No.
Okay. Ooh, we get to take the initiative. That's the best part. Give me that initiative.
We get to go fetch a basic here if we need to go that route. So 1, 3.
I think Ryan
6.
only has 2 basics, and they're both in play. Yeah, only Forest Island.
How many cards have been drawn off the ring so far? Is it?
I can't count that high, Will. Why do you ask me to do math?
I think chat's saying it's 15, and I'm trying to work it out, and I don't think they're lying. I think it's either 10 or 15 cards have been drawn from this ring so far. And
1 plus 2 plus 3, right? Or we haven't activated this turn yet.
Well, no,
or
because we activate this turn, it goes up to 5,
right.
So 4. So we've activated 10. If it gets activated this round, it goes up to 15 cards. Yep.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of cards. Maybe they deck themselves. Maybe that's our win con. And here it comes. Look, temptation counter goes up to 5. I'm going to pick 5 more cards in my hand because I don't have enough, as Ryan says.
I don't know about you, Will, but if I'm at a spot where I have a ring on 4 and I got 4 cards in my deck, I'm still activating it. I'm just going to go out on my own terms. It's fine.
I've told you, I'm on camera. I'm flexing every opportunity I get. I'm like, look at all these cards. Look how good it is. It's when you start discarding so many cards with an Uro that you can then recast it again from the, just keep looping Uros for the sake of it because of this ring. As that was end of turn as well, so we get to start our turn with, I don't know, a gazillion cards going on. Come on,
I mean,
Ryan.
I appreciate Sam for putting up a good fight here. We're still chugging along here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Ryan's got basically everything. All right,
Uh,
Forth Eorlingas for approximately 500, and that's gonna do it.
There's your card. That's the one of that where we're looking for. And we are going to scoop it up. Ryan's going to go one game ahead. Remember, our number one seed going into this top 8. It is now open deck list. So we're going to see players potentially sideboard and start looking at your opponent's deck list. We're going to get them up on the screen for you all at home. We'll start off on Sam's side. The initiative. He is one down. This is a deck that, is fun to your heart and you do enjoy yourself. What would you be bringing in here to try and, shore up this game number 2?
So I want to bring in the Magus and the Boons. Those are pretty good. I mean, Ryan does have the 2 basic lands and the Delighted Halfling. That's kind of the awkward part about this, is the fact that Halfling fixes mana through Blood Moon. So you do have to consider that, but I do think Magus of the Moon is good enough to potentially bring in. I don't think you want to bring in Swords to Plowshares. I mean, it's not really the axis that you're trying to fight on from Sam's side of thing. You're trying to just slam a bunch of haymakers. Loran of the Path don't want those. So yeah, I really think it's just the Maguses and not much else.
It did really come down to what we spoke about at the start of that game. We have to slow down those early turns. If we can slow down the early turns, the Euro deck is going to be able to win the middle to late game, right? And that's exactly what we saw there, being able to kind of stop the early plays with things like Force of Will, etc. We'll see if we can go up and get the next deck up on the screen for you. Ryan's deck here. Here it is. Anything spicy out of the ordinary that we haven't seen from 4-color yet? I'm taking a quick look. Nope, 4 rings. Okay, what do you like bringing in here?
So I think you might want to go towards the Force of Vigors that can help kind of clean up the Chalice of the Voids and other fast mana like Chrome Mox and things of that nature. So you might want to go towards those. Spell Pierce potentially decent at fighting over stuff like Fable the Mirror Breaker. But on the draw, Spell Pierce not as good because you're going to be under the gun about things like Chalice the Void and stuff like that. Past the Force of Vigors and the Spell Pierces, we get a bunch of the Hydro Blast, right? The Hydro Blast are slam dunks. Those are very, very good. There's a lot of red cards in the initiative deck list that we want to name or take care of with Hydro Blast. So the blasts and the forces, past that, not a ton else.
How important are we going to prioritize fetching basics here? If we get the opportunity to fetch, obviously we know that potentially there could be a turn 1 Magus or something going on, but how high do you start prioritizing that, as in getting the basic island so we've got answers like Hydroblast in our deck to answer them if we do end up falling behind that way?
Well, as we talked about, players do have open deck lists, right? There are only 2 copies of Magus of the Moon in Sam's sideboard. There's no Blood Moons in the main deck. That's typically a card, Blood Moon, that you would associate with these kind of red prison style deck lists. Given that there's only 2 moon effects in the entire 75, you might not need to fetch basics as early and often as you would against other red prison decks. And the presence of Force of Will means that if you have Force in hand, then you can probably afford to fetch the non-basics early.
Okay, interesting. Good. We'll see how it pans out for both these players. They are just shuffling up, so we'll go. I'm going to remind you all, if you just tune in, this is the top 8. We started with 172 players. We've whittled it down to the final 8, and they're now battling out to see who can walk away with the big chunk of money. This is a 5K after all, and on top of that, extra points to get themselves on that leaderboard, flying up it, because at the end of the season, you want to be in that top 6. You want to get an invite to that 16-player invite only, 25K tournament. It's basically a PTQ because there's also a Pro Tour invite on the line of it. What's the biggest PTQ you've ever been to, Devin?
Like back in the old school days, I think
in
I
the
went to one
old
that was like 350. One of those.
Ooh, okay, that's a big one. That's a long day. It's a long day of Magic. But let's get down to the table. Let's see how the players are doing with their decks. If they're still shuffling up, it looks like we're just coming to the end of it. Obviously, Ryan 1 game up, our first seed this weekend, going in to the top 8. Sam managed to squeak their way into 8th place because it wasn't a clean cut, or a lot of the X and ones had to play. And I'm not even sure, did any X and ones not get in? Let me have a little quick look at that while Devin says some words in a sequence that impresses everybody in the stream.
No, I'm just gonna go along with you.
No, okay, no, there wasn't. The 6-on-1s upwards all managed to get in.
Oh, there you go.
it kind of was a clean cut, but there was a lot of X ones that did have to play. So,
Right.
but and it's a stacked top 8 as well. We've got Jarvis Yu in here as well on the Grixis Delver. There's a good mix of decks. Obviously, we've got this 4-color deck we see here. We've got Reanimator, we've got Demir Death Shadow. We've got the mono black combo deck, or like mid-range deck that we've seen a lot of talk about that one. Hopefully, we can potentially get that one on stream. We've got Storm, we've got Rakdos Painter, and the Grixis Delver, and then the Boros Initiative deck that we're seeing on screen now, taking a mulligan by the looks of it.
Eight players, 8 different decks. Kind of the diversity here is crazy this weekend with Legacy being such a wide open format. And I don't know about you, Will, but I love watching Legacy games.
Honestly, it's really grown on me. I used to love watching it back in the day, but then I didn't really know what was going on. Now I'm like watching it, commentating it, and just seeing how in depth, how all these micro decisions affect everything in these games. It's huge. It's so good to play, and I hope that we're doing a good job for you all at home, being able to bring that to you, and so you understand all these micro decisions that's happening. Obviously, a lot of that's coming from Devon, giving us absolutely expert opinion all weekend long. But I'm trying to work out how many rings are going to be in this top 8. Potentially, it could be. We've definitely got 4 in that deck. How many's in this mono black deck? 2 in this mono black deck, plus 1 in the board. So 7 copies in the top 8, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if that's Painter. I don't know. The Painter decks I don't think have. The Painter deck does not have rings. So yeah, it looks like 7 copies.
Okay. Well, we're off to the races now, and we're getting
a lot of Bowmasters though.
That's my next one I'm trying to do. I'm trying to work out a Bowmaster.
Will, look what happened. We got Spirit Guide Petal, turn 1, Seasoned Dungeoneer here for Sam. My goodness, that is quite the start, and no Force of Will for Ryan, no Force of You, excuse me, here for Ryan. That's a wild start.
I was just about to say, like, that is a lot of resources that potentially could just get done over by a Force of Will. Like that'd be pretty brutal. But no, we got away with it. We do now have entered the dungeon. We're gonna get that basic mountain, put it into our hand.
You see, Will, I respect this. You're in the top 8, you're down a game, and you're just like, let's just let it ride. Let's jam. You don't have the Force of Will. You just stare him in the eyes, and you're just like, I don't believe that you have it. And Ryan didn't have it.
Hey, I like it. That takes a lot of guts to do that, and it's paid off dramatically here for them. And I'm looking again. So I think we got 13 copies of Bowmaster in this top 8.
That's okay. That's a relative. That's a decently high number. It's not like it's in every single one of our decks, but that is the card that for Legacy specifically that we kind of have been talking about all weekend. That has been the most impactful from the Lord of the Rings set. As we go ahead and we're going to go scrying here. Interesting. Typically with the initiative play patterns, you sometimes will want to go towards just putting counters to get your opponent dead as quickly as possible. But Sam is aware of the presence of stuff like Swords to Plowshares in Ryan's deck list, so doesn't want to kind of go a little bit deeper and wants to try and maybe fix the draw step, trying to find an additional threat.
And on top of that, we get to look at the top card of our library, and it was a land, so we do get to put it into play. So that's 2 lands found out of nowhere, and here comes a Chalice, a very expensive Chalice on 1, and that is going to stop these Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Chalice on 1, resolving here for Ryan. No Force on the opposing side of things. So we take a look at the deck list. There are 3 copies of Prismatic Ending. So you can Prismatic Ending for 2 mana to be able to take care of that Chalice. But, aren't able to go like Prismatic Ending the Chalice for 1 mana and then use the Swords to Plowshares. So, Sam is just in the driver's seat here. We're continuously going through dungeons. Eventually, we're going to get to the final chapter, the final room of the dungeon, which is going to get us another threat, most likely. That Caves of Chaos Adventurer may or may not want to stay on top. We'll have to see what is going to stay on top because we do have access to a bunch of mana. Can just go ahead and cast that next turn.
Yeah, we're going. So as I said, going through the dungeon, we go to the 3rd room. That's going to be stash, because obviously that's where we keep all our treasure. So it does bring along a treasure token with it, but no plays. And we're going to see the Terminus is going to get rid of it. Here comes Wasteland. That's going to get rid of the tomb that we know, and then pass the turn back. Going to chapter number 4.
That's a really big sequence here. So Wasteland to cut off the Ancient Tomb because we know about the Caves of Chaos Adventure. Now it doesn't matter because we have a City of Traitors anyways. But it must feel really bad to have to Terminus that Seasoned Dungeoneer after it's already attacked twice and drawn like 4 or 5 cards.
This is exactly what needed to happen. Obviously, we went to the Catacomb. We got ourselves a good giant skeleton, a 4/1 with Menace. Now we get to look at the top 10 and put a creature into play. Which one are we going to go for? Yep, Hit this in, so
Look
we
at
came
that.
with
Back
three
into
more
the dungeon.
tokens, and we're going to go straight back in again through the secret entrance. That's going to let us go find a basic. We're going to shortcut. That's going to go straight to our hand, and we haven't even got to combat yet.
And that's why this mechanic is so good. It's just that you get so much value. You kind of have the ability to get a bunch of value depending on which rooms you want to go into. You can afford to put even if you're worried about pressure, you can just like go to +2/+2 counters or 2+1/+1 counters, and then drain your opponent for 5. So you can have the option to go aggressive. You can go value, and then once you've completed that dungeon, you just go right back in because it's going to find another creature that just goes right back in, as we see here at the Dungeoneer, and it's just like an endless conga line of value that's going to be really hard for Ryan to fight through.
Yeah, we're literally seeing the power of this deck. We spoke about the early turns had to be dealt with, and it doesn't look like Ryan can deal with them. So we get one of my favorite things in Magic, a game number 3. So we're going to just move back to the booth quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just tuned in, welcome. My name is Will Hall. That is Damon O'Donnelly. We're in the first round of the top 8. So that means 3 rounds in total coming to you. Legacy action. If you enjoy what you see, make sure you hit that follow button. It's going to help the stream. It's going to help bring more paper Magic to you all, something that we all love and it's close to our hearts. Devon, can we get the sideboards up on the screen? Let's see what the players are going through with. We're going to start with Sam here. Anything we're changing up? Obviously, that game went beautiful for us, but we were able to get on the battlefield early, and we kept Chalice of the Voids in to be able to stop potential threats dealing with our board, like the Swords to Plowshares.
No, there's just not that much here besides the Magus and the Moons. Again, Swords to Plowshares, maybe if you want to have like 1 or 2 copies to be able to fight over Uro, but Swords is also awkward when you're keeping in Chalice the Void. Faerie Macabre. I mean, again, it does kind of answer Uro, but at a disadvantage because your opponent already gets the card replaced off of Uro. So I don't know if you want to go towards those, and the Containment Priest is not really doing anything. I mean, I guess you could classify this as a grindy matchup, so maybe you want to just bring in the Emrakul and try to get the 15 mana.
That's that is it's I love how you're coming at this matchup. I'm looking at it, this is the aggro deck. I wouldn't say this is like, bear in mind we
Yeah, true.
turning and burning through the dungeon. Obviously, that gives us the kind of mid to late game sort of action. But if they can stop the early game, this deck doesn't fire on all cylinders like we saw then. And maybe that's going to start affecting Ryan's mulligan decisions in the future turns. Let's see if we can get Ryan's deck up on. See if there's any. Now we've seen how explosive this can be. Even though he's been playing a lot of Legacy all day, he probably knows how this deck works. But there we've got the full scale of it, turning and burning all the way through. Do you think we change our sideboard at all here? Is there anything that we need to be bringing in? Is endurance coming in just as a blocker? Are we going to go crazy routes like that, or are we just going to be mulliganing a bit more aggressively?
It's weird. The endurance doesn't really block that well because the Dungeoneer is a 3/4, and then I guess it trades with Caves of Chaos Adventurer. But yeah, it's not. I mean, I guess like in theory, maybe you get attacked by a creature, and then you can like say end step, flash and endurance, untap, attack, take back the initiative. But I don't think that Ryan's going to want to go towards that route and just go with the blast and maybe the forces.
Okay, interesting. Let's get down to the match. Looks players are deciding on their mulligan decisions, and we are off to the races. Starting off with one of the new cards from the Lord of the Rings set, the Delightful Halfling. Talk us through it. Tell me the modes on it. What does it do?
So this is perfect here for Ryan. This is the new mana dork. It allows you to kind of cast spells. It kind of fixes your mana for legendary spells, so you can cast stuff like Teferi Time Raveler and Uro and potentially the One Ring Uncounterable. The Uncounterable is not going to matter that much in this particular matchup, but what it is going to do is accelerate your mana. And when you're under the gun from stuff like the as we saw last game, the turn 1 Seasoned Dungeoneer, being able to accelerate your mana and get to your more powerful plays a turn ahead of schedule is really important for Ryan here to be able to keep up with all of that card advantage from the initiative.
I do see Ryan. He looks like he's got an Uro in hand and the ring, Swords, Plowshare, Brainstorm, and I believe his second land drop. So a real good opening 7 for him here. Sam's deciding how he wants to go about this. This is telling me that there's something crazy is about to happen. Something explosive is going to be going down turn 1 here, especially on a keep of 7 cards. Let's see
Well,
which one it's going to be.
sometimes if you so it's weird because if you have the Cavern, you might want to lead with your mana first because they're in the situation where if you play the Cavern and then you follow up with a Chrome Mox, your opponent knows that their Force of Will is no good. So we're actually going to see a Cavern and then a Plow on the Delighted Halfling. So the
Okay.
Swords to Plowshares did come in. Interesting.
All right. Value in it. again, it is also going to take off this Uro for a turn. Imagine a turn 2 Uro is going to be crazy into a turn 3 ring, and then things to start going pretty haywire from there. But just passing the turn back, not having this explosive turn, there's a Force of Vigor drawn for the turn. That did come in, like you said. Brainstorms how we're going to lead off. Draw 3,
Yep.
pit 2 back.
Did find a land here. So I think I saw a Force of Will, a dual land, a ring. There was that in endurance. That might have been an endurance too. I
Oh
didn't
no,
quite get a
it's
good
Life
look.
of Loam.
Oh, the loam. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. That does make sense to bring in too, because you do have the wasteland too, so you can even get into the spot where you can kind of like sort of lock your opponent out with loam wasteland.
And just Tundra for the turn. Pass the turn back. What can we do, Sam? Let's see something explosive. Let's go off. Let's go crazy.
Curious as to what the cavern named. I don't know if we can maybe get production to double check on that. Maybe name something like, if we have Archon of Emeria, would want to name. I believe Archon is an angel, if I remember correctly. It's an Archon, excuse me. So, yeah, that makes sense.
This
So maybe name
is
something
the.
like Archon, but we'll have to see what the play is here for Sam.
I think was the decision. This is what we were tanking on. Is we don't have the potential color mana to cast all the spells in our hand, so we need to work out which one is going to give us the highest upside for Cavern. And it looks like it is on humans, so that makes sense when we see this come down here because it is a human berserker. Oh, it's barbarian. Sorry, human barbarian.
Yeah, and that's going to blank the Force of Will in Ryan's hand. Is we saw this last game. There was
There
no
is
Force of Will last game, but this game we don't even care about the Force of Will.
there is a swords in hand though for Ryan. I'm pretty sure
True.
that he wouldn't have put that one back down. That is. I think that was an endurance drawn for a turn, and a
Yeah,
land drop just missed.
yeah, miss land drop. See, it's weird because even with the swords to plowshares, like yes, it does clear the board or clear the threat off of the battlefield, but the initiative just allowing you to get so much card advantage. And as we talked about, if there's no way for Ryan to steal back the initiative, you're just going to let Sam go all the way through the dungeon until we eventually get to the last room, and then that's just going to find the nether initiative creature. So if Ryan finds a land for that endurance, after the swords to plowshares, of course, this turn is able to deploy that endurance, maybe we can steal that initiative and get back in this game.
All right, we do see it come down here. Going to gain ourselves a little bit of life. I imagine that's in the declare attacker step, and no one's come down. But now we've kind of got this a lot of cards in hand. We've scribed. We know what's coming. How are we going to start deploying it? Kevin, remember on humans. And pointing that out here as we see the Peacekeeper comes down. So we're going to get a good look at Ryan's hand because it's going to resolve because that Cavern, remember, things are uncountable. Endurance, double Force of Vigor, Force of Me, and an Uro. Which one's like picking here?
Honestly, probably the endurance because I think Sam might also realize the only way that Ryan's going to really get out of this is draw land 3, be able to hardcast endurance and steal that initiative back. And if you make that endurance hardcast cost 5 mana, there's almost no way for Ryan to be able to steal that initiative back. Within the next couple of turns before we eventually get to the last room. Once we get to the last room, then we can go ahead and just find another creature anyways. We're going to name Uro. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see how we want to go about it. Obviously, it looks like we know there's petals in hand as well, so we might have more plays this turn. See if we want to go about that on Sam's side. Remember, a lot on the line here. This is the first spot in the top 4. We just started the top 8, ladies and gentlemen. If you tuned in, 172 players started this weekend. Only one can take it down, but we're down to the final 8 as the petals played, and then just pass the turn. Ryan, Pat, draw, go. No one wants to
Yeah,
see.
that's not a land. That's not a land, Will. That's a ring, and that is not what Ryan's looking for. So we're gonna go ahead and get to the next room here in the dungeon for Sam. But this is everything is looking up. Everything is looking up Sam at this point.
I think, is there a way that we missed a trigger here in the dungeon? Should we be one deeper than we already are? Because I imagine we're going to go to the stash here, get a treasure token. But
So we
what was
played
it?
caves on turn 2, right? Then the turn
Mhm.
after it went to 1. Then we go upkeep. It goes to 2. Then it got plowed, and then we played the peacekeeper. This is the same turn. Or
Yeah, so
this is right. This is right. Should be going to 3 this turn.
I'm not entirely sure what the players are talking about there. Maybe they're wondering, am I on the right chapter?
Oh, I wonder if we're saying Sam already drew for turn and we missed the trigger. That might be what the question is.
Oh, yeah, that could be a thing. Can it be missed? That's the next question on the tip of my tongue. But that's why we have judges. We can ask judges these questions. If it's a way that we can rewind, if it's a missed trigger, it can be a warning, etc. We'll see if we can get confirmation of what exactly is going to happen and the outcome of this potential judge call. And yeah, looks like John. We get a nice big raid. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Anu. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, he was casting yesterday in the team event that we had here on this channel. That was Pioneer Modern and Legacy. Today has just been all Legacy throughout, though. For all you Legacy fans out there, I know this is a fan favorite format. You're looking into Boros Initiative versus 4-color. Kind of played a lot by the person that just raided us. I knew this is his kind of deck, but normally there's a few more land on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's true. I know. Yeah, shout out to Anu. Thank you for the raid again. Yeah, Anu came right at a good time just to watch some awesome legacy content.
We have seen the ring cast multiple times in this deck and era, but we do need to start hitting our land drops if we're going to not fall too far behind here. We're getting confirmation of what that the outcome of that judge call is going to be. I think it is just a straight up missed trigger, but we're going to float some mana before we play our planes here. That's 4 mana total.
It went to 3, so I'm wondering. Like I saw Sam go ahead and
we can't miss the trigger, is what I'm being told from the floor. So that means we're going to go to the Catacombs. We're going to get ourselves a nice 4/1 black skeleton with a menace, because that's what happens in Catacombs. It's full of all the crypts. We're going to animate one of those deads. D&D lore for you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And here comes Force of Vigor, ditching Force of Vigor. Not the most powerful Force of Vigor I've ever seen in my life. I'm not going to lie to you. Getting rid of a petal and a treasure token.
Yeah, the more I see these Force of Vigors, I'm not actually sure if they're really that good in this matchup. Given, again, we talked about how typical prison decks have a lot of artifact based, prison elements like Trinisphere and Chalice the Void, Blood Moon, and the only one that Sam really has is Chalice. Now maybe Ryan has to bring in the forces just for Chalice by itself. As we see the final room of the dungeon, and as we've seen time and time again, it's just going to let us go right back into the dungeon. Likely going to pick up this Seasoned Dungeoneer.
Yeah, chat asking what was that card that was cast in. That is Caves of Chaos Adventure. That's the big 5/3 with trample. But more importantly, when it ends the battlefield, you gain the initiative yet again, so you can start turning and burning through this dungeon. We've already completed it once. As you can see, we've got the skeleton token on the battlefield, and this is the way that Caves of Chaos Adventure has entered the battlefield. We haven't even cast one yet, which I think we might also have one in our hand.
Yeah, and this is, it's just like I said, just this endless train of value here for Sam, while also just applying so much pressure with these threats. The last dungeon room putting 3 counters on that Seasoned Dungeoneer, just going to make it into just a massive threat, as we see a really, really big attack lined up here. Not exactly sure what the players are talking about, but yeah, this is I would be surprised if this was not going to be a 2-turn clock here from Sam's side of things. It does have the caves, the Peacekeeper, and the 4/1 that I believe can all attack this turn. So we'll have to see how much Ryan is going to take. I guess Ryan's saving grace is maybe Terminus Miracle off the top.
I think that's it, right? It's got to be. What else is there? What else can deal with 4 creatures on the battlefield?
Yeah, I can't really think of any other way out here for Ryan. It's been a while, Will, since the Peacekeeper was cast. Can you remind me what that was named?
Euro.
Okay.
Yeah, that was on the Euro, because we know that one's in hand. Obviously, that's why we didn't cast it last turn. Getting ourselves a little bit of life, getting a little bit deeper in the deck. Here comes a Chalice. Looks like it's going to be on 1. Euro is going to get ditched with this Force of Me. That's going to lose another life point. So I think we are tapping the top of our deck on Ryan's side, hoping for one of these 2 Terminuses left in our deck. But it's not over yet. There's still more coming on from this side.
Still more.
Our Fable the Mirror, of course.
Yeah, and obviously Terminus is a good start, but even if Terminus were found, there's just so much other stuff in the battlefield. The Fable, the Mirror Breaker, the Initiative, and that is going to do it.
That is the handshake there. Ryan is going to have to accept defeat. Sam is going to go take this down and go to the top 4 with Boros Initiative. The deck that you would have bought this weekend, one that you've been speaking to me offline about, saying how much you enjoy it. And that is, we just seen why. That was super explosive. And then I was saying how it's kind of like the aggro deck. We have to stop those early turns. Another one is if we miss our 3rd land drop multiple times, there's a good chance we're going to fall pretty far behind. But on that one, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the quarterfinals. We'll be back real quickly with the semis. Make sure you stick around. We'll speak to you all soon.